Hello and welcome to our 2022 predictions. I'm so excited. I had so much fun channeling this information and I just can't wait to share it with you. If you didn't see last year's, usually towards the end of a year, heading into the next year, I like to make some predictions and just make some take some downloads from what I'm feeling for the next year and just wanted to share it with you guys. So it's a long one. I have oh my gosh, I think 6 pages of channeling. So, grab yourself a drink and preferably a tea or something. And let's get to it. All right, so 2022, I was just right away giggling when I was feeling into the energy of 2022 because it has a bit of a kind of jokester, prankster type energy to it. And you definitely have to have a sense of humor to get it. If you don't find some things to be funny, you're not gonna really love it. But it's a really interesting year because it's this year where there's a tipping point where the masses start to understand that what is up is down and what is down is up. So there's this general energy of haha, gotcha, kind of prankster energy. And that is actually really coming from our Generation Z. So I'm looking down because I'm looking at my notes, but so Gen Z is, I think I want to say they started being born in 96, I want to say, or something. I'm not exactly totally sure, but what's happening is that they are moving into they're in college, and some of them are even starting in the workforce. So we're getting this big wave of Gen Z. And actually what's so funny is that Gen Z is kind of that jokester energy that we're feeling, because in many ways they have been kind of infiltrating our media and kind of having fun watching the adults all be crazy and nuts. And so kind of how Millennials have hackers, Gen Zers have infiltrating TikTokers, people making up fake memes and funny things that are not really real. And that's why there's this overall feeling of oh my gosh, what is up is down, and what is down is up. So we're gonna, there's an overall kind of awakening. I'm saying it from a funny standpoint. Some people might be a little angry about it, but starting to realize that, which a lot of people have already, but there's gonna be this greater understanding of oh my gosh, everything is just what is real and what's not real, that kind of thing. And it's just gonna be kind of a funny gotcha kind of moment over in 2022. So that was fun. And also, okay, yeah. So I wrote down Gen Z is laughing. So that's kind of our overall thing. There's also an overall theme of fix it, kind of more humanitarian stuff that we're gonna see, which we started to see in the Aquarius area, start of the Aquarius area, but now we're gonna see more the buildings have been broken, systems have been broken, and kind of almost people picking up the pieces and being okay, we have to fix this. So there's very much of a fix it energy in 2022, and a bit of but in a different, it's totally a different energy than before, where it was oh my gosh, everything's broken. Now it's okay, now we have to fix some stuff. So we'll see that as well. All right, so we got a lot of breakdowns according to the generation. So Gen Z, Millennials, that kind of stuff. A lot of you are not gonna be happy with me because you're gonna kind of take some of this personal, but hopefully you can just understand that I'm just the messenger. It's not necessarily that I, support all these messages, they're just what's coming through. So, all right, so there's a few, I have a bunch of, I broke them down into little topics. So my first topic is stick to what you're good at and work together. So what that means is that, again, Gen Z coming of age is a big influence right now. And they are very much this generation. And oh guys, if you don't know, what Gen Z is the generation right below millennials. So anyways, they are coming of age, and their overall like collective energy actually has a lot to do with protecting the energy just below them, which are like the kids being born right now, which I just looked up what they were called, and their generation is called like Generation Alpha, like something like that. So those are like our pandemic babies, all the like the little ones right now. So they're coming into this realizing that they are like the big brother to that generation, because that generation, like the babies that we have now, the young kids that we have now, they are like the children of the sun. They are the children of the new earth. So I have goosebumps. So like where Gen Z is like the last of the former earth, and like these kids are of the new earth. And like these kids, the alphas is what they're calling them, or I like to call them the children of the sun. They are so sensitive and like pure that Gen Z knows that part of their job is to protect that generation. So we're gonna start to see them kind of influence, which they've already been influencing, we just didn't know. So like kind of like they've been hacking lots of systems without us really knowing. And I think in many ways without them, they don't really know either. So I thought that was interesting. So anyways, the reason I started off this topic with stick what you're good at is because remember that overall like fix it theme, like let's get it fixed. There is, in order to fix things, we all have to come together and fix it, and we are. But actually the way we fix is going to be different according to like what generation we're actually from. So Gen Z is kind of like saying like stick what you're good at, because what's funny is that obviously there's been a lot of social justice and social change happening over the last few years, but that is a very Gen Z thing, that like they're the humanitarians. And there's this overall feeling that like millennials and like above, but specifically millennials, because they have like a thing with millennials, is that and I'm a old millennial, and they're kind of like millennials, like you're good at like lifestyle and like systems, but like don't get in the way of our social justice, because apparently like millennials are like almost like so serious or like kind of entitled. There's an overall feeling of millennials where like millennials is like your friend that says like that they're from the hood, but like they actually grew up in the suburbs, like that kind of thing, you know, like that's the millennial vibe to Gen Z. Like that's how Gen Z sees them. So millennials have been like trying to stick their hands in these like humanitarian issues, or even generations above millennials. But the truth is like, that's not what they're good at. So everybody has to do like what their generation came for. And there's information on millennials, maybe because I'm a millennial, most of us maybe listening might be. But the thing is, the millennial legacy truly is changing lifestyle. And that's like what we're good at. And that's like what we're known for. And I actually got a list like of what are the good areas for millennials. So like good areas for millennials are entrepreneurship, banking, housing, which actually brings me to the housing market. So like basically, of course, we're gonna wanna get involved in any sort of like movements that are happening, but as a millennial, when I say we, but that is definitely more like of Gen Z territory. And the thing is that millennials hijack them and they make it too serious and they put too much like emotion almost into it, where Gen Z is a little bit more like kind of like doesn't take things as personal as the millennials. And that's why some of like these movements have become like a little very triggering. So they're just like kind of saying like stick what you're good at, and what you're good at are these things, which brings me to housing. If you're planning on selling a house anytime soon, in the States at least, but I guess it looks like it's happening everywhere. Definitely you wanna sell by March 2022. And if you're gonna buy, you want to buy after March 2022. So I wrote here, like, hold on to your pants, because apparently there's something that's going to happen in housing, some sort of, like bubble bursting that is going to be like nutsos, and it looks like the government's going to try to get involved and stuff, and it's just going to be like bananas. So I don't know exactly what that's going to look like, but that's my little tip. Land and lifestyle will continue to be king, is what I wrote. When it comes to housing, even though a lot of things are going to kind of turn upside down, the better investments are always going to be land and where the best lifestyles are at. So like, if you think about a home in San Diego is like never going to be super depreciated because it's San Diego. The lifestyle there, it's beautiful. Obviously I know lifestyle is like up for debate, but that is what's going to like hold. Everything else is just like, I just see not necessarily it's not going to be like people, what's that saying? What was it that like when people like couldn't pay their mortgages? It's not really that's not what's going to happen. It's going to be more like, I don't know, like you're just not, like nobody's going to like pay overpriced payments anymore and things. And it's just really, we're going to see like a big like, just a big moment of being like, oh my gosh, what did we just do with all these like super high prices and houses? And it's also, remember, like millennials that's like their arena, housing. So there is going to be also some movement into like, we cannot be affording $800,000 homes, like this can't be the way that we do things. So that is we're gonna start to see like housing be like a conversation. Speaking of, going back to Gen Z really quickly, if you are a Gen Z parent, it is important to see if you can infiltrate their mentors. What do I mean by that? Gen Z's kids, I guess because they were parented by what is above a millennial, I forgot, Gen X? Is that what's above a millennial? So these Gen Z kids, like they don't want to be like mentored, or it's not that they don't want to be mentored, it's that they don't have like too much respect for their teachers and elders. And it's really because in a way they are kind of smarter than the people that are parenting them and mentoring them. And I mean just like more advanced as a soul, right? So if you're a parent of Gen Z, you probably may know, like, don't get too involved or don't try to push them too much because like they have their own routes. But they may be like in sports or like in clubs or something, or with teachers or in schools where like there's very strong like leadership, and your kids might be telling you that they're having a hard time with like the adults in their lives. And if you can somehow like get to the adults, like the teachers or the mentors or whatever, and kind of help them understand that like Gen Zs don't want to be told what to do, that would be very helpful. Because there's an overall like kind of, I was really feeling like almost like this Gen Z like kind of connection, like they're all connecting and they're just like, they're very upset about like the leadership above them. So as parents, we kind of have to let them, I'm a Gen Z parent. Allie is 16. We kind of have to let them show us the way. It doesn't mean they don't have all the answers. Like there's definitely going to be like a lot of experimenting, but they're showing signs of their adults. Like they're very angry about that. So it's like we kind of have to get out of the way. So it's just like a little side note. Okay. Another topic, health. So health is going to take, of course, it's going to continue to take, center stage, but in a different way. So we're actually going to see food taking a center stage, and actually like how it's made and who it's profiting. Gen Z will spread stories is what I said, what I wrote. Some will be true and some will not be, but there's gonna be like a spread of like, did you know this food is coming from here? Like, and not even like, it's not even so much like whether it's like good or bad for you. It's more about like who's profiting from it. And I know we've already heard a little bit of like, what's that, the theory that like, is it Bill Gates that's like buying up land and like trying to make his own food or something, or like control food? We're definitely gonna hear more of that, and we're gonna get somewhere with that. So some of it's gonna be true and some of it's gonna be false, but we're gonna like, this is kind of like food and is actually gonna start to like move into health in a way, which is gonna like lead us, because we have like an overall health obviously situation going on. So food is gonna like be mixed into that conversation. So there's gonna be like, there's an overall like kind of, you know, boom that happened after COVID with like scientific advances when it comes to health. Like it's almost like we're getting like, not too smart for our own good, but there's like an over testing or an over like analyzing that's gonna like almost kind of like a hysteria, like, oh, now you need like this, you know, scientific test to make sure that blah, blah, blah. There's a lot of these things that are coming out. And it almost looks like a hypochondriac's like worst nightmare. There's certain like systems and little inventions that are gonna be made that like you'll be able to check almost like every germ or something at some point on your own, and it's just going to be too much. And these businesses that are making them, there's this overall feeling of like, be careful with the companies that are making them. Like if they're being run by like baby boomers, and sorry you guys, Gen X, I know, like, again, this is not for everybody, but there's just like, there's some companies that are like really looking for profit in some of these like scientific kind of health, you know, advancements. So just like when you're feeling called to something health-wise, maybe kind of check like who really owns it, because it might not be coming from like a super moral place. So just kind of putting it out there. So like you kind of just want to check where these things are coming from. So I thought that was kind of interesting. I wrote something like, I'm just gonna say it, guys. A lot of you are not gonna like what I'm saying today, so I'm just putting it out there. But there is a little bit of like baby boomers and Gen X like haven't, and this should probably be in the money section, but I'm just jumping around a little bit. It seems like they didn't save as much money as they would like, so we're gonna see some companies trying to sell us things that like we really don't need. So just look out for that. And listen, I'm raised by baby boomers, so it's like, you know, anyways. Okay, millennials in wellness will create, or maybe it's already starting, I don't know, let me know guys, a like new FDA. So there's something that like the FDA or like whatever is already, like looking at our food is like just like not up to par, and foods, drugs, all that stuff. So there's gonna be like a kind of like a marketing push to another organization that's like more, has better morals, like has better things set into play, which again is like a millennial department, like those kind of structures, all that stuff. And if you're watching this and you are part of who's making that, I was just getting like, use marketing to brand the shit out of it. Like, it just looks like there's something that needs to take place of the FDA. Like there's something has to be more respected than the FDA. And it's really gonna come from like our millennial like wellness movement. So cheering you guys on, hoping that comes out, and it's all in the marketing. That's what I got. All right, next area, higher education. So I actually talked about education last year, but it was more like grade school, that kind of stuff. And now we're actually looking at higher education. I have like a lot of goosebumps. I'm a little overwhelmed. There's a lot of anger. Like, I feel bad, but not really feel bad. But it just seems like the kids that are going into college or that have, you know, like our COVID college kids, like they are freaking pissed. And there's also like a general kind of rebellion against their parents and what like almost makes me feel that maybe their parents were like making them work so hard in middle school and high school to get to this like amazing college thing, and then like it's not happening at all because of how much everything has changed. So there's just like this total anger and resentment that we're gonna start to see bubble up in 2022 when it comes to higher education. So there's gonna be some protesting because of like the money that they're spending, which we've already heard that, of course, a little bit. We're gonna see it in a bigger way. There's also gonna be like a calling out of like tenure professors. Like they're definitely gonna be looking for like younger teachers and voices and all that stuff. So we'll see that also, which like, you know, if any of you wanna be professors and are young professors, that's like a good thing for you. And then there is, and there looks like there's kind of the forming, and maybe this already exists, so like let me know, I just don't have a kid in college, but it looks like there's like the forming of these like different types of higher education. So like almost like instead of graduating from high school and going to, you know, whatever university, there's this kind of like think tank situation being created where like you graduate and then you go off to like somewhere in the middle of whatever, and you're there for a whole year and you're, you know, working on these projects or whatever. It's a little culty. So it's like, I put like TBD, like I'm not sure if this is a good thing or not. And I don't know if they exist already, so if they do, but it looks like it's almost kind of like when your kid graduates, like, you know, when you graduate from high school and you go into like the army or something, or you go to the military, there's something, but this is not government related. And it's almost like little like communities. So instead of higher education. So I'm not sure if you guys have already seen that, let me know. But we're gonna see some changes and some like resentment and anger in higher education for sure. All right, next topic is healing, which obviously that's what we talk about all the time here. So we're gonna see a second wave of healing, which is interesting. And when I say healing, I mean energetic, emotional, all that kind of stuff, like ascending as a soul, all that. So we definitely, obviously, COVID threw a lot of people into healing right away. Those early adopters, good for you, because actually in 2022, you're gonna be paying off, you're gonna be receiving a lot of the benefits of that early healing that you were feeling like, that you were doing like before 2020 and then like around 2020. So this year is gonna be very fruitful for those of you. But there is some of us who like, you know, there was like no reason to kind of wake up, or there was a kind of a, like a strength in you that you're like, you know, still make this work. I'm gonna like, life's not really gonna change. Like 20, you know, COVID doesn't mean anything. And then now you're like, okay, no, like it's catching on to, like, it's getting me, you know, it's like this thing that maybe you were resisting. So this is like the second wave of healing. So there's actually gonna be 3 waves of healing throughout this decade, and this is the second, there'll be a third. You know, this is going to be very much like, I'm going to talk about jobs in a second, but this actually has to do with like the Great Resignation and people changing jobs, all that stuff. You know, and this is also why it's like a good time for the healer. Like if you are in the healing world, you have a little bit more say, and even in the medical fields. I know that it feels like these hospitals, you know, my family, they're all doctors, and like these hospitals are nuts, and it just feels like overwhelming. Like you'd be surprised, like you have a lot of say here right now. So like if there's changes that need to be made, things like that, you have the upper hand because there's going to be a lot of need for you, both like our medical healers and like our spiritual, energetic, our therapists, all that stuff. Like it's not over yet, you know, there's just going to be a lot of asking of you. So feel free to like set your terms, you know. Also, like health-wise, this should have been in health, but kind of going back to COVID and all that, I don't really understand this fully, but it looks like we're going to discover another type of like, I wrote down another type of diabetes, but it feels to me almost like there's this underlying condition that humans are suffering from that we don't have a name for yet. And it is the reason why we've also seen like a lot of deaths with COVID, and some people get COVID and nothing happens to them, and some people it just, you know, kills them. This seems to be that like there's testing going on right now to find like what is this. So it almost feels like it's a condition. It's not like, oh, I caught COVID. There's like an underlying condition that is going to start to, and it feels like it's like in the diabetes family, but it looks like we're going to almost like give it a name. Testing is getting better, so that's great. There's like just different ways that we're going to be doing things. And, you know, again, you guys are not going to like the way I say this, but I see everybody as a soul, and I see death very differently than most people, so bear with me. But we will continue with like this death cleansing that's been happening. And the reason for that is, and when I say death cleansing, it's just like, you know, these mass amount of deaths that we've been seeing because of COVID. It seems like souls are almost like they're like taking an out. So some are doing like a game over, like, oh, like, damn it, like all those things I said I was gonna do this lifetime, like didn't figure it out, you know. So there's the souls are like, okay, like game over, like let's do this again. So that's why we see a lot of them going. And then also there's this like other reason for a soul to tap out is what I'm calling like kind of like the kamikaze / catalyst, because it is almost like sacrificial. It looks like some people are passing not because they don't have more to do, or not because like their soul is like, oh, I wasn't on the right path, but they're doing it to create catalyst in like the lives of the people that they love. So that's really hard. But we do see some of that happening as like awakening work, really, to help the rest of us awaken. So we're still gonna see kind of like bulk deaths in a way, bulk cleansing, which is really hard, but okay. Jobs. Okay, so obviously we've been in the middle of like the Great Resignation, right? It's a lot of people leaving their jobs. And there's two like, I guess, follow-ups to the resignations that we're gonna start to see, like, so two effects, kind of. And one of them is half of people are burnt out, they need a time off. There's gonna be a lot of like medical leave, all that. The system, like our systems that give out like medical leave and all that stuff are really gonna be tied up, but people really need it. So we see like half people doing it because of that. Which is, and then I wrote here, like, again, this is like why a lot of these people that are like burnout, taking time off, they're gonna start to seek the healing, which brings us back to food and medicine and healers, all that. Like we're gonna continue to see that to be important. And then the second effect of the Great Resignation, which is like, I think we should start using this word, this term, is because people are going for joy jobs. So like joy, like happy jobs. So they're like seeking their joy jobs, which is like, I thought was a cute word, a cute phrase. Either they're gonna start their joy company, like just companies that they wanna make, or they're going to be shopping around for jobs that bring them joy. And it's going to be very different than like what they were doing before. So that's why it's like joy jobs. And so again, if you're also like, I know a lot of you ladies there's like a lot of like intuitive business coaches in my group. It's great work right now because a lot of these people are looking for those joy jobs, and you'll really be able to support them. But if you are supporting them, I would say that it's most important to focus on joy and lifestyle. Like, so don't just, and if you're starting your own business or your own consulting or whatever, like don't just do it for money. Like you have to set up this new job or this new business as something that works for your lifestyle. Like lifestyle has to be the first thing. And then, you know, everything else you can like learn after that or whatever. So I'm realizing that I'm like not looking at the lens, you guys. It's probably, sorry about that. I'm filming on a camera and I usually film on my phone. So anyways, Joy Jobs. Let's start using that. I thought it was fun. Speaking of Joy, Joy comes back next year, which is so exciting. And I was getting this really funny visual of, I'm sure you guys, like most of you have heard of like The Walking Dead, right? Or any of those apocalypse like movies, you know, end of the world, that kind of stuff. And it's like, you know, it's like so bleak, right? It's like people killing each other and like all this stuff, whatever. So we've kind of reached the end of like The Walking Dead, or, you know, these movies where everybody finally, like, there's only like 10 people left, and they like start looking around and they're like, dude, if we're gonna die, if this is like the end of the world, like might as well like take off our clothes and like have an orgy or something, you know? Like, so it's kind of this feeling of like, oh my God, this is so ridiculous. Like, let's throw the white flag up. And there is a little bit of that like last day on earth kind of feel coming, which I know can sound a little bleak, but there's more to this. But it is a very much like we've reached that point of like, well, shit, let's just like dance, you know? Like, if this is the end of the world, like if this really was the last day on earth, or this was really like the end of it, the beginning of the end, then like, let's have a party. So we're, as a collective, we're getting there because that's what it feels like. You know, it really does feel like the end of the world, which we're going to talk about in a second. But there's this overall just like giving up like the wrong fight, you know, like it's like we've all been like fighting in the wrong way, and we're like starting to give that up. So with Joy comes back comes new entertainment, which I'm excited about. I was feeling very much like new like plays, and like just a lot of artists are coming to entertain in a different way, which is going to be really nice. Also, if you're like in writing or in film, I wrote down like go nuts. So it just looks like a lot of the media that we're consuming right now was made, you know, 2, 3, 5 years ago. And it was very, you know, coming from this place of predicting this like dark, like time that we were going to have. But there are people right now writing and like creating and downloading ideas that are like nuts, like just very magical, and you know, a little bit of like escapism and just really, really cool stuff. So if you're in the entertainment industry, if you're in Hollywood, if you're a writer, if you like making film, like my message to you is like, go wild. Like, let yourself, don't think about like, oh, what has sold, because actually a lot of the things that have been selling in that industry that have been mainstream, like nobody wants to consume it anymore. So there's always going to be a market for those like superhero shows, you know, but this is like a very Alice in Wonderland, like magic, like funny, like that's what we're going to start to see come, and that's what's going to work. Like that's what the collective, because also again, back to Gen Z, like that's what they want to consume. Okay, still with me? I still have a lot more to go, guys. All right, let's go to parents. I don't know why I wrote down parents. Okay. Oh, lied. I want to kind of wrap this up. Well, oh, this is why parents came. Okay. So it is not the end of the world. It is only the end of this world. So that's why we have this little feeling of like, it's the end of the world, or we've had, and that's why we're reaching that moment of like, well, if it's the end, like, let's have fun. It really is not because the world is ending. It's just this world is ending, and that has a lot to do with our alpha babies, which I talked about earlier. The ones that are being born now, that are in like, you know, grade school right now, that kind of stuff. They are the new seeds, and like we're all collectively letting them come and take stage, and they are the new world. They are the new earth. So like, as much as we also think that all the change is going to happen right now, it's kind of like, you know, I'm the child of an immigrant. So when my parents and my grandparents came from Cuba, like we're kind of like in that stage where my grandfather just moved to Cuba with his family, right? Like we're in that stage of like, we're starting, but the fruits of my grandparents' labor are coming right now. They're not even here anymore. But as they see me and the way that I'm living and kind of like all the opportunities I have, that's real, that's the change that they were looking for, but they weren't the ones that were really going to be able to live it. So what we're doing right now is that move, like that my grandparents made, and the babies being born right now are like me, if that makes any sense. So hope that makes sense. Okay. So parents, like I just have to shout out parents for a second, because and specifically young parents of young children, there's many parents right now are healing and learning through their children. So you may think you're like trying to advocate for your kids, you know, almost like they should eat better, or they should feel like their emotions are heard, or like they should learn about spirituality. It's not for them, it's for you. So just kind of, and if anything, they're teaching you, you know, it's like we're all sensing their little energy, and their little energy is like, hey guys, you gotta do this stuff, you gotta work on this. Like, I'm not coming into the world and like dealing with all your trauma. So anything that so it's like all of a projection basically, which I love. So that's why we're seeing a lot of like new kid programming and like new ways of schools, and you know, we're just going to continue to see that in the the little early stages. So keep going, you know, like, so if you're getting downloads for wanting to do like interesting things with your kids, or even if you're coming up with like children's books or whatever, like go for it, because the parents need it and the collective needs it. So, you know, keep going. These little ones are really interested in fantasy and in what is unseen. They're almost like interested in what's the next simulation, and it's definitely not the metaverse. But they're interested in like what is unseen. So if we're like a Pandora box, like they're opening another box. So that's like, you know, that's also like why video games and that kind of stuff is like a big thing for them, because I don't even have the words for it, honestly. I don't think I like completely understand it, but that's what they're about. All right, so speaking of the metaverse, let's talk tech. Social media is going to have a significant decline. I'm sure none of you are upset about that. It's just that, like, it's not that we're not going to connect. Tech is, you know, we're still going to be like deeply socially connected online through the internet, but definitely like whatever is considered the social media giants, like it's just not of interest anymore. We're gonna see just different stuff. I wrote down like corporations are gonna get roped into that like metaverse thing that's happening. Like they're gonna put money into it, because corporations, like, you guys are so dumb sometimes. Like seriously, like it looks like they're trying to like back like the metaverse and like get in, like almost like it makes me feel like they're trying to buy land in the metaverse and like kind of put up their shop, but nobody's like really gonna go for it. So just, if you are a small company, like don't worry about getting into it, 'cause it's not really gonna happen. Actually, what is, video game companies are king. They're, you know, I can't speak for all of them, but there's something about like video game makers that like have an interest in community and an experience. I wrote down like they're interested in experience, not so much taking over the world, which like social media, meta, all that kind of stuff is interested in taking over the world, where these, so there's a differentiation. And I thought that was like so funny, like they're not interested in taking over the world. So anyways, another thing about tech stuff, you guys, anything in tech that started because of money or is focused like solely on profits is not, like, will fail. It's not going to survive. So there was like a lot of ideas that were like, oh, this is gonna like make money. Like it just seems that the only things that are gonna work in tech long term, you know, and be profitable really, are the ones that are like movement focused, that kind of stuff. Okay, Let me have a drink of water. All right, moving into money. All right, so the money is when I was going into money, I was like, oh my gosh, this is very complicated. It was very, very complicated. It is like so complicated. The way that, I don't know, the way we circulate money, the way we depend on security is just so stubborn. But I have some thoughts. So we're gonna see money in 2022, like the old versus the new. The old is markets. It's like kind of like stock markets, like that kind of way of money and investments, all that stuff. And then the new money is ideas and movements, is like what I wrote down, which has been fueling a lot of like tech also. So, but it's not just tech, it's ideas, like new ideas. When I say tech, I really do mean like internet stuff, even though ideas can be like technology, but it doesn't have to be tech related, if that makes any sense. So, but they're ideas, like, which is another thing, like a lot of it might not be like physical products or physical apps. They're like ideas or ways of being and movements. So that's what's going to generate new money. But there's a intersection and a clash between like the old way and the new way. And so what's happening is that, like, if you are a new founder, or if you're somebody that's starting a new movement or something, and you're going to have to go and get investments and get investors, my tip for you is like, you got to be really picky with the money that's funding you. And even if that means like, I mean, that's like in every way, like the money that funds our home loans, the money that funds like our business loans, like we have to be like pickier. And that kind of, because there's going to start to be like this movement to, people are going to start to realize that like we don't want to take money from anybody. It's kind of like saying like, your dad is going to lend you 10 grand, but your dad like will never let you forget that 10 grand, or like he'll make you pay that back plus more, and he's going to make you do a favor or whatever, right? Like that's kind of like, you don't, at some point you're like, all right, I'm not borrowing from my dad anymore. I'd rather borrow from my uncle, who like is very much like, yeah, of course, like I believe in what you're doing, take the money, don't worry about it, like pay me back this way, and you know, it's all good. So we have to, there's gonna get like a system, and this probably has to do with like home also, but there's gonna be almost like this vetting system for like the people who are allowed to let you borrow money. Like it looks like we're gonna start to think about that and create that. So even if like you're a new founder or something and you're getting investments, really try to go small. Try to go with like, I wrote down like family owned, immigrant owned venture capitalism, capitalist, excuse me. So kind of just like know who you're getting in bed with, kind of is the way that, and we all need to see that like anytime any of us take out a loan, a credit card or something, like we need to start to get better at setting the standards for like who is worthy enough to lend us money. Because we've been looking at it the wrong way. We've been looking at it like, oh my gosh, we need somebody to lend us money. Like, am I worthy? You know, have you ever gone through like the mortgage process? It's the freaking worst. Like you think that, you know, they make you feel like a piece of shit. But really the truth is like, we're gonna get to this place of, because those people are making money off of us. Like when they lend us money, we're basically working for them. So it's really like they need us, you know? So that process is like, as a collective, we're gonna start to see that differently. And that's really, I mean, it's not I put TBD because it's still up for grabs. Like we don't know if we're gonna have the courage to be able to do that, because it takes a lot of unlearning and a lot of like kind of poker facing. But we need to get to a place where we understand that like, if they're gonna make money off of this, like we have to decide if we like them. Like if we think they're good people, if we think they're good morals, like are they doing good things in the world, all that kind of stuff. So that's gonna be like a switch. And I just invite you to see loans and stuff like that way. That's actually what's gonna give old money a slow death, by the way. It's just TBD because I wrote down like millennials, like we've messed this up a bit because we, millennials we're interested in lifestyle, but we're like so interested in like security and money, you know, that, you know, our head is somewhere where our heart like is not involved in, and that has to change in order for us to change some of the money stuff. All right. So yeah, like almost like putting more, making it almost, not making it harder for people to invest, but almost like vetting them, you know? Okay, so I wrote down next topic, global migration. So obviously we see a lot of people coming into the US. We see people all around the world moving, and it has, a lot of it has to do with like restrictions and control and you know, and just also poverty and trauma. So I wrote down here like trauma spreads, poverty spreads, and in many ways all this moving is like our karmic debt. So it's not really worth like, I don't know, complaining about it and being like, we should have, you know, like more rules or whatever. It's just, a lot of people are like a lot of people are leaving their countries of poverty and, you know, all the bullshit that's happening in like all these different places to come for a better life. But in many ways, like the way we consume and the way we make money and spend made them become so poor. So this is like our debt, you know? So all of us have to do our part, even if that means that, you know, people have, you know, these beliefs that like immigrants are gonna come in and change, you know, I don't know, our lives or take our social security or like whatever it is. And it's not that that is wrong, like incorrect, but it's that it's kind of like a debt that we have been avoiding. And now we all have to pitch in for this debt because we became wealthy and became America like on their backs, if that makes any sense. So, you know, if that's happening to you in like a personal level, just know we all gotta do our parts, you know? Okay, so some solutions for that ultimately are gonna be definitely education. So if any of you are feeling like taking education to different countries or any of that, the UN is definitely like, I was kind of tapping into, they're definitely like trying, and there's new, there's some bureaucracy there, but there is like some new stuff coming out of there too. So there's an understanding that like, in order to stop this like mass movements of migration, everybody has to be better well-stocked. And a lot of that's gonna start with education. The other thing, you guys, like, and we're all guilty of this, we have centralized all our money and production in China. So that's just bad. It's not that China is bad. So I was saying is that like, it's not that China is bad. It's just that like we're all putting so much in this one place, and it's part of what's causing a lot of like poverty in other places. So it's just not a good idea to centralize. So we just all have to do a better job of it. And I know it's hard, but when you're on Amazon and you're like, where does this thing come from? Like, is there a better place to buy this from? Like, can I stop shopping maybe all the time on Amazon? Like, are there other places like I can support? Like, we really got to start moving around where we let our money flow to. And that's the overall energy of money going into 2022. It's like, this is very precious, and I'm gonna be mindful about who I'm letting have this. You know, it's like almost like the worthiness starts to move into the person. Like, I'm worthy of this money, balls in my court, and like, I'm gonna decide if I want it to be in your pocket or not. Like, I'm gonna decide. So in the very big ways and the smallest of ways, that's gonna be the big change in money. Oh, and the next social movement is gonna be stop consuming. So we're gonna start to see kind of like some campaigns about like overconsumption of just shit, you know, like when you realize you're like, why do I have all this stuff? Like, do I really need all this stuff? That's gonna be, I think it's already coming. I think even if you think about this like last Black Friday or whatever, it was just like a different vibe. And we're just gonna see that more and more. Also, like, you know, one good thing about like this global migration is that race labels really start to disintegrate over the next few years. So, all right, closing it up. Couldn't finish like a prediction, I feel like, without government and governments. And this just felt like an overall kind of like positive like reminder is that I was getting the download that like governments don't matter, that movements matter. And we've already seen that. So again, power is just, you guys, you know, power is starting to, I know it could be like very grim many times, but power is definitely starting to move around. So, and we can see it already in government where our movements are dictating what governments end up doing. So, and I know that's hard to hear in like places that are, I know in the US we can do that a little bit more. I mean, Cuba and Venezuela and in Australia, like the lockdowns, I get it, like it's very frustrating, but like keep going, because that's like movements are what dictate government at points, or even they're like what's seeding the next, like those movements are seeding the next leaders. So like don't give up, and don't hold that energy thinking that we're like victims to these leaders. Like I was very much getting the vibe of like, if we only knew we were free, you know? So the other thing though about movements, the other side of that are that movements are like a game of telephone. So what does that mean? That messages can get lost, you know, and they can get, you know, other people can add stuff into it. So whenever you're thinking or maybe getting involved in a movement, like go back to the core of like where that started and try not to add any energy that's not supposed to be there. So we kind of want to try to keep these movements as pure as possible, because we're not always the best at that, because it's the nature of like the game of telephone. And for those of you, you know, who are like afraid of like all the scary stuff, the biggest enemy we have right now as a collective is greed. It just is. And it's very important, like as somebody who like likes lifestyle and who's, you know, bougie and like, you know, nice stuff, I'm not saying that greed, just because you have greed doesn't guarantee you're gonna have money. And just because you're not greedy doesn't mean that you're going to be poor. So greed is like, actually has nothing, is like very separate from your ability to bring in money or not. So you can feel safe to let go of that like very root chakra survival, like, oh my gosh, I must have like more and more and more. Like you can let that go and still know that you are gonna be super provided for and abundant. Like they're not like related, but greed is really literally the root of all evil. So it's kind of this, you know, it's like a, we're really trying to balance the power, and we're getting there. We really are. Like, you know, 2022 is starting to be like the beginning of like the light at the end of the tunnel for sure. And when it comes to greed, we're balancing power by almost balancing this codependency where like some of us think we're victims, and then some of us think like we're, you know, like almighty, all powerful. And then like, of course, this guy gets more power from this one being more of a victim, and this one becomes more of a victim as this one gets more power, that kind of stuff. And that's a codependency. So like the powerful have to like tone it down. And then the, those of us who are feeling like victimized, we got to rise up. And that's how like that's really what we're trying to do as a collective, to start balancing out that power. For somebody like me who, you know, my roots are from a communist country, you know, when we think of balancing out power, we tend to think like, oh my gosh, now everybody's gonna have the same thing. And that's not what it is. It's actually energetic. There are no more victims. There are no more bullies. We're all equal, and that has nothing to do with money, which is like what we don't get. It's not, nobody's taking your money, guys. Like, I promise. And it's just a balance of relationship. Like, think about any relationship you've ever been in that it was codependent. Like, it's finally coming into a partnership, and that's what we're trying to do as a collective. So that's why a lot of these like changes and things like that are happening. So anyways, I hope that was helpful. 2022 is going to be a really fun year. It's going to be more like fun and silly and like lots of laughs than definitely like the last few serious years. Like, we're going to learn to fix things without being so serious about it, which is just going to be a nice vibe. But like, you know, hard work is not done. Like, we are in a time of change, and we just have to keep the vision for like the little ones, the alphas, for the kind of world that they're going to live in, and let them give us to continue to give us the vision. So that's a lot of what's happening. So hope that was helpful. Love you guys so much. Feel free to drop some comments, ask some questions, and I'm wishing you all the beauty in 2022. May you find your joy jobs and like health, and just have a good time and keep being the beautiful, heart-centered, loving people that you are.